Okay, so we are back for part 2 in reviewing the case of the state versus, if you will, the Church of God, Henry Hildebrandt. And again, I want to repeat, we're not talking about his spiritual condition here. We're talking about the case where he said, hey, you guys, as my province and my nation, you've violated my rights of freedom of religion. And as we reviewed in part 1, the state admits fully and completely that they indeed violated those rights. However, because of how the charter is written, the way it works is that the judge just brings in section 1 and says, however, as far as I'm concerned, it was reasonable that we interfered with your rights and we violated them. We're allowed to do that. And that indeed is totalitarianism. So what I want to show you now for this part is how the judge speaks in this case. You can totally see within how the judge speaks that they are claiming complete authority over what is right and what is wrong when it comes to your civil liberties in every shape, way, or form. They don't need the criminal code to make something criminal when they have the charter. They can make having Christmas dinner with your family illegal if they deem it reasonable to do so. And that's the issue with the charter. And that's why Mr. Trudeau, and if Mr. Peckford had anything to do with it, they wrote this document for this purpose, to be able to make anything they want appear to be unlawful, even though it is not, or to make something lawful that they have absolutely no right to make lawful. All right? And it's section 1 of the charter that is just absolutely glaringly obvious. And I said it before, I'm not saying that there's not some nice people out there that, are involved in the law. What I'm saying is anyone using the charter is in for a fall, and I don't care what fancy suits are telling you otherwise because of how the charter is written. Section 1 gives all the state authority to do whatever they want, and that is a huge problem. But here's the good news. You don't have to invoke the charter. You can use the Canadian Bill of Rights, and you can just cite it. All right. It's a civil liberty document with royal assent from 1960. And you can self-represent yourself, or if you do want a lawyer, just make yourself assured that he is not or she is not invoking the charter. All right. Because once you do, you give the state that section 1 to hit you over the head with. So as you can see, this indeed is the same case law. All right. I just wanted to show it to you. And here's Henry's name, of course, as I mentioned before, right there. And of course, right above it, Church of God. Okay. So now I'm going to scroll down just to make so you guys can see. Then I'm just going to zip it right down because, again, now this time we want to see exactly what the judge says before basically saying, oh, yeah, we violated your rights, but it's totally okay for us to do that. All right. So I'm going to take it from 172 and 173. And please do, if you have some time, check out the rest of it, because here's the point. It's not that Mr. Hildebrandt and their lawyers didn't make a good case. They made a good case, so much so that the state admits that they violated the Church of God's rights. That's not the issue. The issue is they're saying it's okay for them to do it on a whim if they think it's reasonable. That's the issue. And who gets to declare whether it's reasonable or not? Well, the government. Well, yeah, but you can challenge it. Yeah, by a state-paid government employee that's more than likely not going to vote in your favor because they're working for that very government, and you would be asking them to basically commit themselves to the position of, oh yeah, this whole thing for the last 2-3 years has been a total scam. You're totally right. It's totally unreasonable what they did. No, they'll never do it. However, if you use the Canadian Bill of Rights, they don't have that section 1, and therefore they cannot club you over the head with that section 1 that you did not invoke. All right. So look at 172 here. It says, this is the judge speaking, okay? And the judge says, I accept that this is a legitimate aspiration. However, it does not change the outcome in this case. I note, by way of digression, that by breaching the law, the claimants showed, look at this now, a lack of respect for state authority. We are the authority. How dare you? What lack of respect you have. Don't you see that we can say that you can only have 10 people in your 20,000 square foot building, and then we can tell Costco they can have well over 300. That's what we deem because we are the state authority. See what's going on here? Clearly, the judge has this attitude that they get to violate your rights. And you guys, you Church of God people, violated our state authority, as opposed to the state saying, well, yeah, we violated your rights, but that's fine. But apparently we have to be very respectful towards them. You see what's going on here? And look at the next two words, their disobedience. Ooh, you know, see what I'm talking about? Is this in any way anything other than a totalitarian attitude by the judge? Why? Well, because they've got Section 1 and they actually believe they have these rights to do this to you, to oppress people and to violate their rights. And this round, it was the Church of God. Next round, it can be you. And that's why you need to speak against using this document. But let's continue reading what the judge says. Their disobedience is, for constitutional purposes, besides the point. Really? Doesn't seem to be. What does matter is the respect. See, this is another time, the respect. See, you got to have respect. Really? Did you respect the people that you called non-essential? Because I don't mind telling you, I felt very disrespected when you told me I wasn't allowed to work because I'm a bad boy. I'm a bad non-essential piece of garbage, see? You're not important, so you stay home. And by the way, if you were making $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 a month, be happy with $2,000 because we said so. Of course, we're not going to reduce your taxes or any of your bills or anything like that. However, still, you'll have to just make do with the $2,000. And if you can't, too bad for you. Wow. Sounds like totalitarianism to me. Sounds like discrimination too, by the way. Sounds like rights are being violated. Sounds like you're not respecting us. But let's continue. What does matter is the respect shown by Ontario to religious institutions by tailoring restrictions. So they're actually claiming they were very respectful to the Church of God here. That's what they're actually claiming by tailoring the restrictions. Really, to 10 people? And that's the pastor plus the band is included in that 10? Really? That you felt that was reasonable. See, you get to declare what's reasonable. That's very interesting. By tailoring restrictions and easing them when it was possible to do so. See, they did the state did a wonderful job, whereas you people who were, exercising your freedom of religion, very, very naughty. Full accommodation of religious freedom would not have resulted in legitimate inconvenience for government. It would have represented a wholesale abdication of government responsibility, look at this, to act in the public interest. Well, you didn't act in my interest, and there's thousands of people that you didn't operate in favor of. See, again, this is the state saying they declare what is in your best interest. That's what the reasonable limit clause does. It gives the state the position psychologically that they get to deem what is best for you, including if they have to remove your rights on a whim. See, you don't get to go visit your mother or your father in the old age home. But the same nurse that goes to Costco on the same day you did, he or she, they get to handle your mother and your father. Yeah. See, that's reasonable to them. Do you see? Who gets to make those decisions? With the charter, they do. And of course, it says to act in the public interest. It would have meant turning a blind eye to threat of severe health consequences for a large swath of the population. See? And that's why it says, hence, I have little hesitation in concluding that while numerical and percentage gathering limits infringed, they use the terms like infringed as opposed to violated and completely annihilated Section 2 of the Charter, which is your freedom of religion and freedom of conscience. The salutary benefits of these restrictions outweighed the deleterious effects on religious freedom. See, bottom line is we get to decide how much religious freedom you get at any time. You believe that, getting together with your brothers and sisters, for example, and worshiping God, maybe even saying some prayers together might be helpful. Well, too bad. We don't think so. And we're the authority here. See? Ontario has met its burden to establish that the regulations in issue are what? Reasonable limits. That's it. And they are demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. See, they get to decide what your civil liberties are and to what amount. That's what Section 1 of the Charter does. I've shown it before. I think it's worth seeing again. As you can see, they claim that they give you your rights, as you can see, right? They guarantee, quote unquote guarantee, it's not a good one, of course, the rights and freedoms set out in it, and which, by the way, a little side note, you don't have enjoyment of property at all. Not that it would matter much because, of course, if you have it, but they get to limit it, well, then you kind of don't have it, see? And of course, they say, but it's subject only to such reasonable limits. This is what Mr. Peckford wrote. And then he says, oh, they're not using it properly. Oh, I sincerely disagree. They're using it exactly how you wrote it, Mr. Peckford. You're saying that if they believe there's reasonable limits to limit your freedoms to whatever they want, you didn't put any boundaries here. It's an open door here. And clearly, the state won't argue against itself. So these reasonable limits prescribed by laws can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. These limits are set by the government themselves. And then you have to go to that very government and say, hey, you guys, that wasn't reasonable. And they're going to go, yeah, it was. And that's exactly what happened here. Okay? So the restrictions were there. They go, oh, yeah, we know we totally violated your rights. But guess what? It was justified. And that's exactly what the judge says. And this is exactly why I would suggest strongly you take a good look at this Canadian Bill of Rights, which is a federal statute, because your civil liberties are nationwide. It doesn't matter if it's a provincial mandate. It doesn't make any sense to say, well, because it's provincial, you can't use the Canadian Bill of Rights. That's nonsense. Civil liberties are federal, and therefore enforcement of any kind of civil liberty, pro or negative, becomes federal. And by the way, law enforcement is federal. It's federally regulated. And therefore, civil liberties are everywhere in the nation, right? It's not like you can have certain rights in Toronto, but of course, they're not in Vancouver. That's ridiculous. It's a nationwide civil liberty for every Canadian citizen. And that's why the Bill of Rights has no such clause where they can limit your rights. How can they potentially remove someone's rights? They'd have to break the criminal code. And last I checked, visiting your mom or dad in the old age home or having 7 people or 12 people over for Christmas dinner isn't illegal. But with the Charter, they can make that illegal. At least make it look like it is. And of course, as I mentioned before, here you do indeed have enjoyment of property, by the way, with no loopholes. So the Canadian Bill of Rights is the true law of the land, not only because clearly it doesn't have any strange totalitarian loopholes, but because it complies with do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And no one's going to convince me that you would like someone or a state authority to call you non-essential. No one's going to convince me that they would prefer to be called that on a regular basis. So therefore, this Canadian Bill of Rights complies with the key law of God. The Charter, on the other hand, does not. Hope this video has been enlightening. I hope you tell people about the Canadian Bill of Rights and how much better of a document it is. And I also hope you tell people that the Charter is a very, very nefarious document, and no one in Canada should ever be using it. Hope this video has been helpful to you. Grace and peace.